The courtroom was silent that morning. People filled every seat, waiting for the moment when a little girl named Lily would walk to the witness stand. She was only 7 years old, small for her age, with brown hair tied in a ponytail and eyes that looked both scared and brave. Her hand held tightly onto the leash of her golden retriever, Max. The big dog walked beside her slowly, his fur shining under the courtroom lights. Everyone watched as the judge nodded, allowing the dog to stay with her. Lily's steps were soft, but every eye followed her. The sound of her shoes against the wooden floor echoed like whispers. She climbed onto the witness chair, and Max sat right beside her, pressing close as if to protect her. The judge leaned forward kindly and said, "You're safe here, Lily. You can tell the truth today." But Lily didn't answer. She only looked down, her small hands trembling slightly. Her mother sat behind her, tears in her eyes, but she said nothing. Lily had been through more than most adults could imagine, and this day was the hardest one of her young life. Max rested his head on her knee. His brown eyes were calm, gentle, patient. That gave her the little bit of courage she needed. The room waited, lawyers, officers, the jury, and all holding their breath. The prosecutor, a kind woman named Ms. Parker, spoke softly. "Lily, can you tell us what happened that night?" The little girl looked around the courtroom, then down again. She didn't speak. Her lips trembled, but no words came. The silence felt heavy. Some people began to think she wouldn't be able to talk at all. Then Lily leaned close to Max. She bent her head, pressing her lips near his ear, and whispered something that no one else could hear. The courtroom grew even quieter. Only the sound of her whisper and Max's soft breathing filled the air. The golden retriever suddenly lifted his head. His ears stood tall, his eyes moved, not toward the judge, not toward the prosecutor, but straight to the defense table. A man sat there, his face pale, his hands twisting nervously. Max's tail stopped moving. He didn't bark, but a deep, low growl rolled quietly from his throat. The reaction was immediate. Every person in the room turned their head to follow the dog's gaze. The man at the table shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to notice. But Max didn't look away. He stared straight at him as if recognizing something no one else could see. The judge raised his hand gently. "Order in the court," he said, trying to keep calm, but even he looked curious. Ms. Parker crouched beside Lily and asked softly, "Lily, sweetheart, what did you just tell Max?" Lily hesitated, her small fingers clutching the dog's fur. Her voice came out in a whisper again, but this time everyone heard. "I told him. He remembers what happened that night." Gasps spread through the courtroom. The words were simple, but they hit hard. The defense attorney quickly stood. "Objection." But the judge silenced him. Everyone was frozen in place. Lily's voice grew a little stronger. "Max knows. He saw him. He barked when he came in. He tried to protect me." Her words trembled, but her eyes did not move from the man at the defense table. The dog gave a quiet bark, one short sound as if agreeing. The man's face turned red, then pale again. Ms. Parker looked at Lily carefully. "You're doing great, Lily. Can you tell us how Max helped you that night?" The little girl nodded slowly. He barked and scratched the door. He didn't stop. He wanted someone to come. When the police came, Max ran right to the shed. He found the man hiding there. The courtroom stayed silent, every word echoing. The police officer who had led the case nodded from the back. It was true. That was how they had found the suspect that night. But no one had ever heard Lily speak about it before. The defense lawyer tried again to interrupt, but even he looked uneasy. The judge said quietly, "Let her continue." Lily's voice trembled again. "Max remembers. I told him he was brave. He saved me." She pressed her face into the dog's neck. Max wagged his tail gently, leaning closer to her as if he understood every word. For a few seconds, no one could move or speak. Even the people who had come just to watch had tears in their eyes. A child's quiet courage and a dog's silent loyalty had just spoken louder than any adult could. The judge finally cleared his throat and said softly, "Thank you, Lily, you've done very well." Lily nodded, still holding Max. She didn't smile yet. She was tired, scared, and brave all at once. But in that small moment, the entire courtroom saw something they would never forget. A little girl finding her voice, and a dog who never stopped believing in her. When they left the stand, Max walked proudly beside her, his tail brushing the floor. The door closed behind them. But the memory of that whisper, and the shock it caused, stayed with everyone long after the trial ended. It was only the beginning of what the world would later call the day a little girl and her dog changed everything. The courtroom still felt the echo of Lily's whisper. Everyone had seen the golden retriever's reaction, and no one could forget the way he had looked straight at the man on the defense bench. The tension in the air could almost be touched. People who had come to the hearing expecting a short session now sat forward in their seats, waiting for what would happen next. Lily sat quietly beside Max, one small hand still tangled in his fur. The judge spoke gently. "It's all right, Lily. You can tell us what happened." His voice carried calm strength, the kind people use when speaking to someone fragile. The little girl nodded slightly. Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. She looked at the prosecutor, Ms. Parker, and then back at her dog. "Max knows," she said softly. "He remembers that night. He tried to help me." A few quiet murmurs rippled through the courtroom, but the judge raised his hand for silence. Everyone stopped breathing for a moment. Ms. Parker knelt down beside Lily again, her tone soft and kind. "Sweetheart, can you tell us how Max helped you?" Lily's eyes grew distant for a moment, like she was seeing something that no one else could. "That night I was in my room," she began. "It was dark outside. Max was sleeping near my bed. Then I heard a noise. I got scared. Max stood up and started to bark. He ran to the door and growled." Her voice shook slightly, but she continued. "He was trying to tell me something was wrong. Then he went to the window and barked again. He didn't stop barking. I remember holding his collar because I was scared." The defense attorney shifted in his seat. His client looked uneasy, his eyes darting toward the floor. Lily took a breath. Then Max ran out. He pushed through the door when it opened. I didn't see where he went, but he was barking outside. Later, when the police came, they said Max led them to the man. The judge leaned back, his eyes thoughtful. He glanced toward the detective who had worked on the case. The man nodded. "That's true, Your Honor. When we arrived, the dog ran straight to the shed behind the property. That's where we found the suspect hiding." The courtroom filled with quiet murmurs again. Even people who didn't believe in things like instinct or memory couldn't ignore what was unfolding before them. Lily looked down at Max, who had stayed calm the whole time. His eyes were fixed on her, waiting. She smiled faintly and said, "He remembers." When I whispered to him just now, he looked at the same man again. He never forgot his face. The man at the defense table swallowed hard. The lawyer beside him stood and said quickly, "Objection." "The girl is being lit." The judge cut him off gently. "Overruled. The witness is speaking freely. Let her finish." Lily nodded, still holding Max. "I told Max it was okay to tell the truth," she said softly. "He was scared that night too, but he stayed with me. He scratched the door until someone came." Her mother in the back row began to cry quietly. She had seen her daughter broken for months, silent, afraid to leave her room. And now she was watching her speak with the strength of someone far older than her years. Ms. Parker looked toward the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, this child has lived through more than anyone here could imagine. Her companion here, this dog, was trained for comfort, not defense, and yet he acted when it mattered most. This isn't imagination. This is loyalty." The judge nodded, his voice calm but heavy. "We all saw the dog's reaction. That wasn't something that could be rehearsed." The defense lawyer sighed, flipping through his papers. He looked unsure for the first time since the trial began. His client wiped his forehead, staring at the table, avoiding the dog's steady eyes. Lily kept talking, her voice still quiet, but stronger now. "After that night, Max never left my side. He sleeps near my bed every night. When I have bad dreams, he wakes me up. He makes me feel safe." Her words touched everyone listening. Even the court clerk looked away for a second, blinking back tears. Ms. Parker spoke softly again. "Lily, do you remember what you whispered to Max before he looked at that man?" Lily thought for a moment. Then she nodded. "I said, 'It's okay, Max, you can show them.' You remember?" And that was exactly what he had done. The detective stood from his seat in the back of the room. "Your Honor," he said, "I can confirm again that the dog's behavior during the investigation matched what the child is describing. The dog found the hiding spot. The evidence was discovered because of him." The judge looked toward Lily, his expression soft. "Thank you, detective. And thank you, Lily. You've been very brave." The little girl gave a small nod and hugged Max again. He wagged his tail slowly, resting his head on her arm. Then something unexpected happened. A juror, an older woman, leaned forward slightly and asked, "Judge, may we ask a question?" The judge allowed it. The woman spoke kindly. "Lily, did Max ever act this way around anyone else?" Lily shook her head. "No, ma'am. Only when he sees that man. Every time." The woman nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you, dear." That simple moment spoke louder than 100 arguments. The jury had seen truth without needing to be told. The defense lawyer sat down slowly, his confidence fading. His client covered his face with one hand. No one missed the way Max continued to stare quietly at him. The judge finally spoke again. "We will take a short break." He struck the gavel once, and the sound echoed through the silent courtroom. As people began to move, Lily slid off the chair. Max followed close beside her, tail brushing gently against her leg. She walked toward her mother, who stood waiting with open arms. The crowd parted as they passed. Reporters whispered, trying to catch every word, but Lily didn't say anything. All she did was bend down and kiss Max on the head. "You did good, boy," she whispered. He wagged his tail and looked up at her, eyes full of quiet love and understanding. The judge, still watching from his bench, couldn't hide the small smile on his face. Even he, a man who had seen hundreds of trials, knew this was something different. Something pure. When Lily and Max left the room, the people inside stayed silent for a long time. What had begun as a legal hearing had turned into something much deeper, a moment that showed truth doesn't always come from words. Sometimes it comes from loyalty, love, and the quiet bond between a little girl and her dog. Outside the courthouse, the sunlight fell softly on them. Cameras flashed, but Lily didn't care. She knelt down and wrapped her arms around Max again. "It's over," she whispered. "You helped me. You helped everyone." And for the first time in a very long while, she smiled. A real smile, full of peace and hope. The next morning, the courthouse was even more crowded. Word had spread overnight about the little girl and her dog who had stunned everyone with a single whisper. Reporters gathered outside, but inside the air was quiet and serious again. The judge called everyone to order. Lily sat once more on the witness stand, with Max resting faithfully by her feet. The defense team looked tired. The man on trial sat with his eyes down, barely moving. Across the room, Lily's mother held her hands together tightly. The people on the jury glanced at the girl, waiting. She seemed calmer today, though still shy. But everyone could feel it. Something important was going to happen. Ms. Parker, the prosecutor, spoke gently. "Lily, you did very well yesterday. You were very brave. I know it was not easy to talk about that night. But can you help us understand what you remember after Max barked?" Lily's small hands fidgeted with Max's collar. The dog wagged his tail once, then stayed still, watching her. She took a deep breath and began to speak in a low voice that carried across the quiet room. "After Max barked, I heard footsteps. He was barking louder and louder. Then I heard someone shout. I was scared. I hid in the corner. Max didn't stop barking, not even for a second. The people in the courtroom listened closely. Her words were soft, but they painted a picture that everyone could see in their minds. The police came, Lily continued. They said Max wouldn't stop running around the yard. He ran to the shed and scratched the door. He knew someone was inside. The detective from the back row stood to confirm her words. Yes, Your Honor, that's correct. We followed the dog because he wouldn't calm down. When we opened the shed, we found the man. He tried to hide under some old wood boards. A quiet wave of surprise moved through the courtroom. Some people looked at the man sitting at the defense table. He didn't look up. Miss Parker nodded, her eyes kind but serious. Lily, what did Max do when the police found that man? The little girl hesitated, her eyes lowering. He growled. Just like yesterday. He remembered him. Even the judge leaned slightly forward. Do you mean Max recognized him right away? Lily nodded. Yes, sir. He never forgets faces. He's a smart dog. Her words were simple, but they carried more weight than any lawyer's argument. The jurors wrote notes quietly. The defense attorney whispered something to his client, but the man didn't reply. Lily looked at Max again and smiled a little. He was scared too that night, but he stayed with me. He didn't leave me, not even for a minute. A few people in the courtroom wiped their eyes. It was impossible not to feel the bond between the girl and her dog. Ms. Parker stood and faced the jury.
Sometimes the smallest details tell the biggest truths.
This child has not only remembered what happened, She has shown us how loyalty and memory work together. The dog's reaction is natural and honest. He cannot lie. His behavior yesterday was proof of recognition. The judge agreed silently with a nod. He could see how deeply the story had touched everyone in the room. Then Ms. Parker turned back to Lily. "Do you remember what happened after the police came, sweetheart?" Lily nodded again. "One officer picked me up. Max was barking and trying to follow us. I told him it was okay. I said we were safe now. He stopped barking, but he stayed close. He never let me go far from him again." Her small voice filled the courtroom with warmth. People could almost picture the golden retriever walking beside her like a guard, making sure no harm ever came to her again. The judge smiled softly. "That must have made you feel better." "Yes," Lily whispered. "He makes me brave." Those 3 words seemed to touch every heart in the room. Even the court reporter, typing silently, paused for a second to look at her. The defense attorney finally stood up and tried to speak, but his voice lacked confidence. "Your Honor, we respect the witness's feelings, but this is all emotional testimony. We can't rely on a dog's behavior." Before he could continue, the judge spoke firmly. "You can't ignore what was seen in this courtroom. Everyone witnessed that reaction yesterday. This dog knew something real." The defense attorney sat back down, defeated. Ms. Parker turned once more to Lily. "One more question, dear. Why did you whisper to Max before he looked at the man yesterday?" Lily smiled shyly, her eyes glistening. "Because Max listens when nobody else can. I told him it was time to help me tell the truth." The word struck everyone deeply. A soft murmur filled the room, and the judge had to quiet it again. Ms. Parker stood straight and looked around the courtroom. That whisper was the moment this child found her courage. She trusted her best friend to help her speak when she could not do it alone. That is not just bravery. That is truth from the heart. The jury sat silently, but their faces told the story. Many of them had tears in their eyes. The judge finally said, "We'll take a short recess. The jury will have time to rest, and so will our witness." As everyone stood, Lily climbed down from the chair holding Max's leash. The golden retriever stood tall beside her, calm and proud. The people in the courtroom made way for her as she passed, some smiling gently, some wiping their eyes. Outside the door, Lily's mother knelt down and hugged her tightly. "You did it, sweetheart," she whispered. "You were so brave." Lily looked up and said, "I wasn't alone. Max helped me." She patted his head and the dog wagged his tail happily. The detective approached them and smiled. "That dog deserves a medal," he said kindly. "He's a real hero." Lily giggled softly, the first real laugh she'd made in a long time. "He just wants treats," she said, and everyone around her smiled. For a moment, the courthouse steps felt warm and full of hope. The hardest part was not over yet, but the truth had begun to shine through. People inside were talking and about how a simple whisper, a loyal dog, and a brave little girl had done what years of experience sometimes couldn't, bring honesty and heart into a courtroom. As Lily walked down the steps, Max trotting beside her, the afternoon sun touched their faces. Cameras clicked, but Lily didn't look at them. She only looked at Max and whispered again, "Thank you for remembering." He wagged his tail, eyes gentle and full of trust. No one knew yet what the final verdict would be, but everyone who had seen that day knew one thing for sure. Truth had already spoken, not in shouts or anger, but through a child's courage and the steady heart of a dog who never forgot. When the court gathered again after the break, the air inside the courtroom felt heavy but calm. The sunlight through the tall windows fell across the floor, and the quiet murmurs of people faded as the judge entered. Everyone could feel that something important was about to happen. The little girl, Lily, sat beside her dog once more. Max rested on the floor, his golden fur glowing under the lights, his calm eyes watching every move. The jury returned to their seats, serious and silent. The man at the defense table looked pale, his hands gripping the edge of his chair. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he only nodded without meeting anyone's eyes. Across the room, Lily's mother sat with her hands clasped, whispering a small prayer under her breath. The judge cleared his throat gently. "Court is now in session," he said. "We'll continue where we left off." Ms. Parker, the prosecutor, stood first. Her voice was soft but strong. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began. "Yesterday and today you have heard the words of a child. You have seen her courage and the loyalty of her companion, Max. Their story was not told with anger or hatred. It was told with truth. She looked toward Lily and smiled gently. Sometimes truth does not come in loud voices or clever words. Sometimes it comes from innocence, from someone who has nothing to gain and everything to lose. And sometimes that truth is carried by love. The courtroom stayed silent. No one even moved. Ms. Parker continued. You saw how the dog reacted when the little girl whispered to him. You saw how he recognized the man at that table. That moment was real. It wasn't planned, it wasn't acted. It was pure instinct and memory. And in that moment, we all saw something honest. This little girl trusted her dog to help her tell the truth because she believed he would never fail her. She turned toward the jury. I ask you to remember what you witnessed. A child and her loyal friend gave you the truth, not with force, but with faith. When she finished, she sat down quietly. The defense attorney stood next. He tried to sound calm. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, we all feel sympathy for the girl, but emotion cannot decide a case. We must rely on facts. He spoke for several minutes, but his words sounded weak and hollow. The people in the room could see that his confidence was gone. Even he seemed to know that the truth had already been spoken, not by lawyers or arguments, but by a little girl and her golden dog. When he finished, the judge nodded and asked the jury to retire for deliberation. The courtroom emptied slowly except for Lily, her mother, and Max, who waited quietly. The air felt heavy with time. Lily sat on the bench, her small hands folded in her lap. Mom, she whispered, did I do good? Her mother brushed her hair gently. You did more than good, sweetheart. You were brave. You told the truth. That's all that matters. Max lifted his head and rested it on Lily's leg as if agreeing. His tail moved just once, brushing lightly against the floor. Hours passed. The clock ticked softly. The courthouse outside was quiet except for footsteps echoing through the halls. Then finally a knock came at the door. The jury had returned. People rushed back to their seats. The tension was thick. The judge took his place again and called for silence. The jury foreman, an older man with kind eyes, stood holding a folded paper. He spoke clearly. We, the jury, find the defendant. He paused, looking at Lily for a brief moment. Guilty on all counts. Gasps filled the room, followed by whispers. Lily's mother pressed her hand to her mouth, tears filling her eyes. The man at the defense table closed his eyes and lowered his head. The defense attorney placed a hand on his shoulder but said nothing. The judge struck his gavel once, the sound echoing across the quiet room. Order, he said softly. Justice has been served. He looked toward Lily and smiled faintly. You were very brave, young lady. You helped us all remember what honesty looks like. Lily didn't quite understand the meaning of every word, but she felt the warmth behind them. She smiled a little, clutching Max's leash tighter. Thank you, she said softly. The judge leaned forward. And thank you, Max, he added. The courtroom chuckled quietly through tears. When they stepped outside, the afternoon sun was bright. Reporters stood behind barriers, cameras flashing, but the police gently kept them away. Lily didn't mind the noise. All she cared about was that it was finally over. Her mother knelt and hugged her tightly. It's finished, sweetheart. You can rest now. Lily nodded and looked at Max. We did it, she said. He wagged his tail and gave a small bark, as if he understood every word. A police officer approached and smiled. That dog of yours is a hero. He did more for justice than most people ever will. Lily looked up proudly. He's my best friend. The officer patted Max's head. And a good one at that. Later that day, the judge signed the final papers in his chambers. Before he left, he told one of his clerks, I've seen hundreds of cases, but I'll never forget this one. That child reminded everyone why we listen to our hearts as well as the law. Back outside, Lily and her mother walked toward their car. The courthouse steps were covered in light and the air smelled of hope. Max walked between them, his head high, his tail moving proudly. When they reached the car, Lily opened the door and turned to look back one last time. The building stood tall and still, the place where she had found her voice. She leaned down and hugged Max tightly. You helped me be brave, she whispered. You remembered when I couldn't. He licked her cheek and wagged his tail harder. Her mother smiled through tears. Let's go home, sweetheart. You both deserve a rest. As they drove away, the courthouse behind them faded in the rearview mirror. The radio was quiet and the world outside seemed peaceful again. Lily rested her head against Max's fur, and for the first time in many months she felt safe. That night Lily slept soundly. No nightmares woke her up. Max stayed beside her bed, watching her breathe softly. The moonlight touched his fur as if blessing him for what he had done. Downstairs her mother stood by the window, looking out at the quiet street. She whispered softly, "Thank you, Max." The golden retriever raised his head for a moment, then laid it back down, eyes calm and knowing. He didn't need words to understand. He had already done what he was meant to do. The story of the little girl and her loyal dog spread far beyond the small town. Newspapers called it the whisper that broke the silence. People everywhere talked about the bond between a child and her dog, how love and trust could bring truth to light when nothing else could. But for Lily, it wasn't about fame or news stories. It was about one simple thing. She was safe and her best friend had never left her side. That night, as she dreamed, Max stayed awake a little longer. His eyes were half closed, his breathing slow, and his heart steady. He had done his duty, not as a witness, not as evidence, but as a protector, a friend, and the truest kind of hero. The morning after the trial, the town was quiet but full of talk. Everyone who had been in that courtroom the day before could not stop thinking about what they had seen. The little girl who whispered to her dog, and how that small act had brought truth to light. Newspapers carried the story on the front page. "Little girl's whisper brings justice," one headline said. Another called Max, the dog with a memory of gold. But inside a small white house at the edge of town, life was peaceful again. Lily sat in her room, brushing Max's fur while sunlight streamed through the curtains. The trial was over. The fear that had lived in her heart for months was finally gone. Her mother walked in quietly and smiled. "You both look happy this morning." Lily nodded. "He's tired," she said, rubbing Max's back gently. "He did so much." Her mother sat beside her. "So did you, sweetheart. You were brave. You spoke up when no one else could." Lily leaned against her, smiling softly. "I didn't do it alone, Mom. Max helped me." Downstairs, the phone rang. Her mother answered it, and after a moment she smiled through tears. "Lily," she called, "the judge wants to see you and Max today." Lily blinked in surprise. "The judge?" "Yes," her mother said warmly. "He said it's important." Later that afternoon they returned to the courthouse, and at this time it didn't feel scary. The building that once felt cold now seemed full of light. People smiled at them as they walked inside. Reporters stood outside the doors, but the guards kindly kept them back. In the courtroom, the judge was waiting. He smiled kindly as they entered. "Hello again, Lily. Hello, Max." Max wagged his tail and gave a small bark as if greeting an old friend. The judge leaned forward on his bench. "You two did something very special. You reminded all of us that truth and courage can come from the smallest hearts. Because of you, justice was done." Lily's mother smiled proudly. Lily looked down, shy but happy. The judge lifted a small box from the desk and opened it. Inside was a shiny silver medal attached to a blue ribbon. "This," he said, "is for Max, for bravery, loyalty, and service beyond words." Everyone in the courtroom clapped softly. Lily's eyes grew wide. "For Max?" The judge nodded. "Yes, and one more thing," he added gently. "A special certificate for you, Lily, for being brave enough to tell the truth." Lily stepped forward, her small hands shaking as she took the paper. Max wagged his tail, looking proud as ever. She bent down and hugged him tightly. "You're a hero, Max," she whispered. The judge smiled. "You both are." That night, when they returned home, neighbors came by to see them. Some brought flowers. Others brought treats for Max. Everyone had kind words to say. "We're so proud of you," one woman said. "You made the whole town believe in good again." Lily smiled but stayed quiet. She didn't like too much attention. All she cared about was that Max was safe and happy. When the crowd left, the house became calm again. The evening sun painted the living room golden. Lily sat on the floor, her back against the couch, Max lying beside her. "Mom," she said softly, "I think he knows he did something big." Her mother smiled from the kitchen. "I think he does, sweetheart." The TV played softly in the background, showing a news report about them. The reporter's voice said, "The bond between a little girl and her dog has touched hearts everywhere. Their story reminds us that love can speak even when words cannot." Lily giggled. We're on TV. Max lifted his head, his tail thumping lightly against the floor. Days passed and life slowly went back to normal. Lily went back to school. Her classmates welcomed her with smiles and drawings of her and Max. The teachers hugged her and said how proud they were. At recess, Lily sat under a big oak tree with Max lying beside her. Other children came and sat around them. Is he really a hero? One boy asked. Lily smiled shyly. He's just Max, he's my friend. That simple answer made everyone smile. From that day on, Max became a small-town legend. The police invited him to visit the station. The mayor even called to ask if they would come to a community event. Lily and her mother agreed. The day of the event was sunny and bright. A crowd gathered in the park. The mayor spoke kindly about courage and truth. Then he turned to Lily and said, "We honor bravery in many forms. Today we honor a child who spoke from her heart and a dog who listened." People clapped as Lily and Max stepped forward. Max had a small blue ribbon on his collar. The mayor handed Lily a bouquet of white flowers and gave Max a special tag that read, "Hero Dog of the Year." Lily blushed as cameras flashed, but she didn't mind this time. She held Max's leash proudly. "He just wanted to help," she said when someone asked how he knew what to do. "He always helps." After the event, they walked home quietly. The day had been long but full of joy. As the evening sky turned pink, Lily sat on the porch steps beside Max. She rested her head against his shoulder. "Do you think everyone will remember us?" she asked softly. Her mother, sitting behind them, smiled. "Oh, sweetheart, they'll never forget. You didn't just tell a story. You reminded people what love and courage really mean." Lily looked down at Max, who gazed back with kind brown eyes. "I think he reminded them," she said. Her mother chuckled. "Maybe both of you did." A soft breeze moved through the trees. Somewhere nearby, church bells rang. The world felt calm, peaceful, healed. That night, as Lily got ready for bed, she placed Max's medal on the small shelf above her desk. The silver caught the moonlight. She whispered, "You'll always be my hero, Max." Max jumped up on the bed and curled beside her. His tail moved slowly, brushing her arm as she fell asleep. The town moved on, but the story stayed alive. People still spoke about the girl who whispered to her dog, and how that moment changed everything. Years later, when Lily was older, she would sometimes walk past the courthouse with Max. His muzzle gray now, but his spirit just as warm. One afternoon, a young woman recognized her and said, "You're Lily, right?" "The one from the story?" Lily smiled. "That was a long time ago," the woman nodded. "My daughter read about you in school. She said she wants a dog just like Max." Lily laughed softly and looked down at her old friend. "There will never be another Max," she said. "But every dog has a heart like his if you just listen." The woman smiled, touched by her words. As they walked away, the sun dipped behind the courthouse, casting a golden glow over the steps where Lily had once stood trembling and brave. Max walked beside her slowly, his tail swaying, still her shadow and her strength. The world had forgotten many stories by then, but not theirs. The whisper of that little girl and the loyalty of her golden dog became part of the town's heart forever. And whenever people spoke of courage, they always remembered the day a small voice and a loyal heart made the whole courtroom believe in goodness again. It wasn't just a case that was closed that day. It was a wound that had healed, a hope that had been reborn. Lily and Max proved that even the smallest whisper, when spoken with love, can echo louder than 1,000 voices. And that was the moment everyone would always remember.